Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Vamos a dar inicio a este evento de empoderar a los consumidores acerca del etiquetado nutricional. El porqué de este evento es sencillo, pero es una historia que al final las cosas más sencillas son las que mejor salen. Hace exactamente un año, el 12 de octubre de 2021, participé como ponente de un evento organizado por Competere sobre el mismo tema que vamos a debatir hoy. And we have translation in English, I think in French also. No, in English, no? In Italian, English, and that's all. ¿Es okay? Let's go. Bueno, pues hace un año participé como ponente en un evento organizado por Competere sobre el mismo tema que vamos a debatir hoy, sobre el etiquetado frontal nutricional de los alimentos. Ese día tuvimos una conversación muy interesante. Fue un evento realmente muy rico, muy interesante, muy plural, muy abierto, en el que se formulaban algunas de las preguntas que va a discurrir, o sobre las cuales va a discurrir este debate, ¿no? Primero, si hay que armonizar el etiquetado, cómo hacerlo en el caso de decidir que sí, y cuáles son los retos y oportunidades para el sector agroalimentario y especialmente cómo podemos empoderar al consumidor con esta medida, con la incorporación de un etiquetado armonizado. Después de este evento nos reunimos con Pietro Paganini, director del think tank de Competere, y estuvimos hablando sobre la importancia de proporcionar a los consumidores una información fiable y sobre todo de cómo las políticas de hoy en día afectan a su libertad de elección. Y también sobre los beneficios y desventajas que los etiquetados como el Nutri-Score tenían para los consumidores. Y estuvimos dando vueltas una conversación tan larga como hoy sobre si la información es imprescindible, pero es imprescindible que sea veraz. Es muy importante que la información sea veraz para que sea información. Y hay cierto debate acerca del Nutri-Score y acerca sobre si realmente a veces una buena idea con una buena intención no puede resultar un resultado pues, que vaya en contra de los objetivos que en principio se plantean, ¿no? A partir de esa conversación y de esa participación en el evento de Competere, surgió la idea de trabajar conjuntamente para visibilizar los retos y oportunidades de un etiquetado armonizado, de manera que la Comisión los tenga en cuenta en la preparación de su propuesta legislativa, que, como ustedes saben, probablemente pueda presentar a finales de este año o a principios del año que viene. Yo creo, y aquí como legislador, lo que uno aprende es que en los debates políticos hay que estar desde el primer minuto sentado en la mesa de negociación y que es muy importante previamente tener espacios de debate, de encuentro, de escucha, que generen conocimiento y posicionamiento a la hora de después poder incidir positivamente en este caso, pues la propuesta que puede formular la Comisión Europea. Por ello, y para finalizar, hoy estamos aquí por este motivo, para hablar del etiquetado frontal desde el profundo rigor científico, desde la profunda vista económica y comercial y desde un objetivo final claro, que es la defensa del consumidor. Pero para hacerlo desde el conocimiento científico y desde la perspectiva económica y empresarial de las decisiones que adoptamos como legisladores. Muchas veces, como legisladores, perdemos a veces la perspectiva de cómo afectan nuestras decisiones. Y por eso es importante que, previo a ese momento de la decisión, nos juntemos, nos escuchamos y compartamos. Por lo tanto, finalizo así. Espero que la jornada sea interesante. El panel es formidable, o los paneles son formidables. Y con ello le doy la palabra a Pietro para que presente el primer panel y al conjunto de los ponentes. Gracias, Pietro.
Gracias, Jordi. And I'm Pietro Paganini, and I'm the chair of Competere, and I want to thank you for hosting here. I want to thank Ciudadanos and Renew Europe for the support. My role initially will be to introduce the speakers. We have 3 panels plus panels with members of the European panel, your Parliament. The panels are divided. First one is focused on the scientific and nutrition aspect. The second one is more focused on the market impact of the labels, and the third one is more focused on the consumers, and then we will see what MEPs will be focusing on. I will not read all the bios because you can find them at the entrance. So you can read the CV, the bio of the speakers, and learn everything about them, as well as the agenda. I want to remind that there is a translation from English to Italian and to Spanish, if I'm correct, I understood correctly from you. We started a bit late because there are still some people joining. There are some people online as well that they are taking the advantage of the YouTube channel. Actually, Einstein argued that time is relative. I'm still Italian, despite I travel a lot around the world, and I believe that time is really relative. But here in Brussels, with a lot of friends from the Nordic country, time is no longer relative. So I ask everybody in the panels to be precise, and I'm talking to a Spanish and to an Italian, so hopefully, and to scientists, so they could go long. So I will have, at some point of the day or the night, to interrupt you. I will start immediately with Professor Michele Caruba, who is a professor of pharmacology at the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Milano. And then I will go on with Professor Ramon Estruc, professor of the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Barcelona in Catalonia in Spain. Please, Professor.
Thank you. My presentation will be on obesity and food education, the urgency to promote healthy diets. May I have the first slide? Come potete vedere da questa diapositiva, se può partire il filmato? Ok? Vedete che l'obesità è una patologia che ancora non è perfettamente riconosciuta come tale in molti paesi europei, ma sta crescendo dal 1975 a oggi in maniera veramente vertiginosa, e vedete che mano a mano che si spostano i colori verso il rosso, la prevalenza di obesità nel mondo sta crescendo in maniera preoccupante.
Cómo está creciendo de forma preocupante esta enfermedad. ¿Por qué? Porque es una enfermedad, y es una enfermedad que puede ser compatible además con otras enfermedades. En esta vemos la prevalencia de la obesidad en los países europeos y vemos que esta varía de un 10 a un 3% de la población. Si calculamos además el sobrepeso, que es una condición previa a la fase de obesidad, pero de por sí es ya un problema, podemos decir que más que del 50% de la población tiene un peso que no es compatible con la salud. Y podemos hablar verdaderamente del término epidemia. Este problema va a empeorar en los próximos años. Se ve en esta diapositiva. Aparecen ciertos países europeos en donde la obesidad va a pasar de este 10-30% hasta un 40 o 45%. Esto es muy preocupante. Hay que tener en cuenta otra cosa. La obesidad infantil crece a un ritmo todavía más rápido. Fotografiar la obesidad infantil es equivalente a fotografiar la situación de las futuras generaciones. Por eso vemos que aquí hay un problema serio. Vemos cómo las complicaciones de la obesidad afectan prácticamente a todos los órganos y aparatos de nuestro organismo. Empezamos por los pulmones, el hígado, el intestino, el cerebro, el corazón.
Causa patologie in tutti questi organi.
La obesidad causa patologías en todos los órganos. Por ejemplo, si hablamos de ictus o de enfermedades cardiovasculares o de cáncer, parece que hay una relación. Se piensa que el 35% de los tumores podrían prevenirse si lleváramos una alimentación correcta. Con todos estos datos podemos ver cómo se trata de un problema importante que afecta a la esperanza de vida de la población. Aquí pueden ver como si un individuo se convierte en obeso entre 20 y 40 años, tiene una expectativa de vida, dependiendo de si es hombre o mujer, inferior. Hablamos aquí de una variación de unos 8 años. Es decir, ¿cómo podemos perder 8 años y medio de esperanza de vida por esta obesidad? Y algo que todavía es más preocupante es que si calculamos la expectativa de vida saludable, digamos, aquí se reduce de un 20%. Es decir, es una patología que no afecta únicamente desde un punto de vista económico y no afecta únicamente a los problemas sanitarios y a la sostenibilidad económica del sistema sanitario, sino que tiene otros efectos. Los sistemas sanitarios probablemente se van a ver comprometidos en los próximos años. Lo que sucede es que sobre todo afecta a los costes indirectos. Si hay personas que están enfermas durante 20 años, difícilmente van a poder ir a trabajar.
Da un punto di vista.
in their works and from an economic standpoint. Next slide, please. A recent study, which was published on the New England Journal of Medicine, took a snapshot of this situation in the United States. In the United States, obesity has a prevalence which is much higher than in Europe, and things are expected to happen which have no precedent in the history of humanity. There is an entire generation today will have a life expectancy that is lower than the previous generation. So if we do nothing, of course, to prevent and treat this pathology, this problem. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as you can see, in the past 50 years, in the last few years, dietary and life habits have changed. We have moved from, 1950 with a diet based of 2,100 calories to 2,800 calories today. So we're basically intaking a lot more energy than we can burn because we have cars, so we don't walk anymore. We have lifts. We don't take the stairs anymore. We have heating in our homes, so we don't use energy to keep our body temperature at 37 degrees. There's cars, so we don't walk anymore, as I said before, and we usually work in front of our computer screen, so we don't really move around much. So you may well appreciate that we need to do something about these two issues. The first issue is diet, and the second is a sedentary life. When it comes to diet, next slide, please, we have to try to focus on a healthier diet. And the healthiest diet of all is the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet was discovered by the Americans after the Second War. And the Americans asked, how come Italians live longer than Americans? And so they sent their scientists, including Angel Keys, who did a 7-country study, as it's called. And finally, they proved and they understood that life expectancy is connected to a healthy and balanced diet. Hence, the Mediterranean diet, which today can be very easily expressed with this food pyramid scheme, so to speak. This food pyramid basically tells us that there is a balance between macronutrients, lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins, which has to fulfill this percentage. And in order to get to this percentage, there are some foods that must be consumed every day, even several times a day. So every meal should include these nutrients, which are vegetables, fruit, bread, pasta, and complex carbohydrates. There are other foods that must be consumed daily, and the Mediterranean diet, it tells you how much of these ingredients you should consume. It tells you that you should eat 1 or 2 portions of fruit every meal. You should eat 2 or 3 portions of dairy products or milk, or 3 or 4 portions per day of olive oil, for instance, and so on and so forth. As you can tell, there are other foods which are included in this pyramid, which must be consumed weekly, so not daily. So a number of portions per week and not per meal or per day. So this pyramid gives you an idea of what you're supposed to eat, how you're supposed to eat it, and how much of it you're supposed to have. Next slide, please. The Mediterranean diet stands out for a moderate intake of eggs and cheese, of red meat and processed food, especially processed meat. Animal fats should be consumed moderately, but this diet is richer, and you're supposed to eat more fish, more complex carbohydrate, bread or pasta, for instance, vegetables, beans, olive oil, and fresh fruit or nuts. So basically, scientific studies, next slide please, have proven clearly. I've brought just a few examples, which are the most recent from 1995 to 2007. These are scientific studies that claim that by implementing just 2 of these principles characterizing the Mediterranean diet, you can reduce mortality for every cause by 20%. And then there's the false prophets of diet. So there are many diets out there, but if you look at the scientific evidence, science tells you that Mediterranean diet can reduce by 20% mortality for all causes if applied properly. Next slide. In the next slide, you can see we're losing our dietary habits that are set out in the Mediterranean diet. This is a slide for Italy, but this goes for every other country in the south of Europe in the Mediterranean basin. And as you can see, what's happening is, for instance, that all dietary mishaps, the most common mistakes in Europe when it comes to food, have to do more with the wrong consumption instead of a excessive consumption. So much so that today, at least in Italy, 65% of people do not eat enough vegetables. 81% do not eat enough fruit. And as you can see, there's nobody who eats excessive fruit or fruit in excess. And then you have complex carbohydrates like pasta and bread. You have more people that eat less than they should rather than the opposite. This is again for Italy. And as you can see here, fish. 59% of people in Italy don't eat enough fish, but there's none of them who eat too much fish. Whereas there are other food types, such as meat or processed meat, where there are people who eat too much of it. But look, the only food type which is eaten in excess are sweets. So this is the situation that somehow should cause us to somehow tweak and change the way we consume our food. Next slide, please. So the European Parliament has decided to promote, this is front of pack labeling, the FOP labeling initiative, in order to somehow help people make better choices when it comes to their food. Next slide, please. So the two systems that have been considered are Nutri-Score, which was proposed by the French, and Nutri-Format, proposed by Italy. So we have considered and analyzed the difference in which one could be better only when it comes to preventing obesity. We're not talking about economics. We're talking health here, the health of people. So we have analyzed these two systems in this respect. And as you can see, Nutri-Score is a system. It's sort of a color system. It has red, which means careful, green, have as much as you want, and then there's an intermediate yellow. So it's a kind of a traffic light system, which is based on an algorithm that assigns a score to the content of foods in terms of good for your health or bad for your health. But it has some shortcomings to it. The first is that it tends to classify food as good or bad. There's no such thing as good or bad food in absolute terms. There is good diet and bad diet. So within bad diet, you can have, or in good diet or good dietary health, you can have everything as long as the content, the quantity of it is correct. So you have to look at the dosage, and you have to look at the frequency of consumption or intake, if you will. So another shortcoming to the Nutri-Score system is that it's very focused on what's bad in food, so much so that the algorithm assigns 40 points to negative effects and 15 points only to positive effects. The other problem is that the system was devised thinking about 100-gram portions. So it doesn't really factor in the idea that some foods are eaten and are prescribed by Mediterranean diet at 25 grams a day. So it doesn't really consider portions in this respect. So diet is not just made of quality, but also quantity. And portions are the ones that determine quality, or quantity rather. And finally, this system doesn't really provide any indications to anyone suffering from any disease. If you have hypertension, for instance, you have to be very careful at the sodium content of food. But if you see a red label, you don't know whether you can or cannot eat it because of the sodium content. Much like if you have high cholesterol levels, you have to look at saturated fats. If you have diabetes, you have to look at sugars. But this kind of labeling doesn't really allow to discern whether a certain food is good for you if you're suffering from a certain disease. So my last slide is Nutri-Forma, the Italian system. So Nutri-Format provides a lot of information. Next slide, please. There you go. Yes, that's it. Nutri-Inform battery gives information on the serving size. It tells you that a 30-gram portion equals to that content. And it gives you an information of calories per serving. And it also provides calories per 100 grams. And again, it provides information on how many lipids and saturated fats and sugars and salt are included in that food, so you can find the right indication for your condition. And this is expressed as a percentage of the ideal consumption, which should amount to 100%. That is 2,000 calories.
Otherwise, other people won't much. But everybody can come to Milano and listen to your splendid lectures. We also know that being online is much better because you can see the slides from closer, but being here is wonderful anyway, and see each other and enjoying coffee and networking. Professor Struck, I'm coming straight to you, and I'm sure that you will help me making up a bit. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, gracias por... Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'd like to move on to my first slide to look into the challenges that we have in terms of nutrition. We're all here today because we have bad dietary habits, and in most cases, this can worsen our health. And this is why we need to look into it, because it can put our health in risk, and it has a heavier weight than other factors. I would like to look into 3 levels: the personal level, the population level, and the global level, or the planetary nutrition, especially in the way it affects the globe and the way we make certain decisions. I'd like to start with the personalized nutrition. This slide, thank you. This can be analyzed from different perspectives. We can have different groups of people. We'll have people that have hypertension, high cholesterol, obesity, and the general tendency is pointing to personalized nutrition or precise nutrition. Next slide. And so in this context, we see that certain people have allergies, intolerances, metabolic diseases that find themselves in different stages in their life regarding their age, whether a person is pregnant, lactation, and then we also have the cultural factors. All of these are essential when defining the different factors. We're talking about people, not just a population group. We decided to dwell onto genetics and non-genetic factors and the way in which certain genes, we take food in different ways. The effects of food can be different. An example, the perfect example is coffee. Some people can have a coffee all day, including at midnight, and they'll be able to sleep perfectly, whereas others can't. So all of this has to be taken into account in the decisions that we take. We can have certain people that have certain genes, such as the ones that you see on the slide, that need to take zinc supplements in order to have maintain glucose homeostasis, so an equilibrium in their glucose. Mediterranean diet can also reduce stroke risk in some cases, and we also have people that have to take vitamin B2 to reduce the risk of hypertension. Next slide, thank you. This has to be taken into account. There was the study that was funded by the EU, Food for Me, that also detected that personalized nutrition would be optimal instead of general recommendations. We don't have one size that fits all, and we cannot apply that principle to everyone. With the tools that we have at our availability, including artificial intelligence, we can look into the diet, the microbiome of an individual, the doctor's reports, physical activity, the different tools that we have to measure our health, wearable sensors, for instance. If all of these factors are included in an artificial intelligence program, we would have individualized recommendations for every citizen. And that is something that we're looking into. We have this recent study of the American Health Association that enabled us to establish 6 million genetic variants, and we had different scores according to the different types of genes. Those that had certain genes had a higher risk of suffering cardiovascular diseases. But on the next slide, we can have life's simple 7.
Sí, con estos 7 consejos de vida.
With these simple 7 tips: stop smoking, eating better, losing weight, being active, reducing blood sugar, and managing blood pressure. With these 7 different tips, we would be able to attain a lot more than when analyzing our genes. individualized diets are still important, but general advice must not be forgotten. I would like to look into the Mediterranean diet. We know that it is number one in comparison to many others. This is something that we've been studying for years. This is the US News rating that it was better than the DASH diet and the flexitarian diet that were good against hypertension. And in Spain, we decided to carry out this study, PREDIMEDS, that looked into the effects of the Mediterranean diet on cardiovascular diseases. We had groups of people that had high cardiovascular risks, and so we divided them into different groups. Some of them followed a Mediterranean diet with virgin olive oil, others with nuts, and then a third control group that had a low-fat diet. So we were looking into diets that were high in vegetable fats and lower vegetable fats. Not all fats are bad, as many say. We can have dried fruits or olive oil that are really good for our health. And so with this study, we had randomized groups that gave us a high level of scientific evidence, and we were able to detect that those that were that had the extra virgin olive oil Mediterranean diet and the Mediterranean diet with nuts had 50 less probabilities of suffering these diseases and dying from them. We were able to reduce the mortality rates. And so when looking into the different numbers, the effect was of 60%. There is no medicine that has such a high impact in preventing cardiovascular diseases as the Mediterranean diet. And so this was applicable to all groups, both male and female, all age groups, and diabetics and non-diabetics. So it was efficient whenever it was followed in the right manner. And something that was very interesting is that when we were looking into the polymorphism factors, we were able to detect that those that weren't following the Mediterranean diet properly, if someone had a polymorphism, they would have a very high higher glucose. And the situation could be improved with the Mediterranean diet. So we were able to block the bad genes. So the environments can have a very strong impact in the genes, and it can really work on certain gene groups that a person may present. This also had an influence in the strokes, so that had these polymorphisms, TT and CT, had more prevalence of ictus. But when following the Mediterranean diet, all groups, all polymorphism groups were able to lower the quantity or the possibility of suffering a stroke. Another thing that I would like to underline is sustainability, because we have no planet B. Sustainability is essential whenever making decisions. And so we cannot follow certain advice if the actions are not respecting the environment and are not sustainable. And so in this regard, red meats, has a very negative impact on the environment, also because of the water consumption, especially not to suppress it completely, just to reduce the red meat consumption. So the flexitarian diet, that is very similar to the Mediterranean diet that has a lot of vegetables, would be highly recommendable for our population. We believe that flexitarian diet is better than the vegetarian because of B12 and other vitamins. There is no better diet than the Mediterranean one. And so our advice is to reduce the consumption of meats, starchy vegetables, so potatoes, sweet potatoes, and increase the number of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, so that our diet can be truly healthy. And so with this, I'd like to conclude. personalized nutrition is the future. Of course, we still need to work and we need further studies. The Mediterranean diet is the best offer because we've been able to scientifically prove that it prevents cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, and cancer. And when making decisions, we need to preserve the health of the planet. So the best diet for a person is usually the best diet for population and for the planet. And in this case, it would be the Mediterranean diet. Thank you very much.
10 minutes.
I put
Somos los alemanes del sur.
Thank you so much. We are improving on the timing, and I thank you very much for being here. I can assure everybody that the slides will be available. We can post them on competitor.eu website and share. You can also email us to receive your slides. I will ask the two of you, thank you very much, and you can rush still. And I like now to just change very quickly our table, and I'm sure we will furtherly improve on our timing. And I'm calling to the table Miss Veronique Willem, and also I'm calling Horst Hertz. And I will, don't worry, but try to summarize some of the key concepts that were expressed just a few seconds ago in my very last remarks before leaving the floor to the members of the European Parliament. I will start right away with Ms. Nick Willems, who's the Secretary General of Smes Medium Enterprises United. So the floor is yours, and you understand we are now turning from specifically discussing the scientific aspect behind nutrition to instead market issues, commercial issues, and the impact that labels might have on free trade as well. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, also thank you for inviting SME United to participate and provide the view of small and medium-sized enterprises to the topic today. I think it's a very timely and important debate. I would like to start by highlighting that 93% of all companies in Europe are companies with less than 10 employees. We always refer to SMEs in Europe is 99.8% of all companies, but even more important for me is that 93% and the average number of employees is 4 in European companies. Many of those companies are also the companies producing that Mediterranean diet, and I feel already a bit annoyed being Northern European now, because probably my diet hasn't been really conducive for a long and healthy life, and certainly not in current situation, but okay. So that means that those companies in Europe with that maximum number of 10 employees, the entrepreneur is working with her or his team during the day, providing us all with quality products and services. And in the evening, when staff goes home or when they go home, some of them might be working in the evenings as well, in HoReCa, for instance, that entrepreneur has to start looking into which rules they have to comply with and how they are going to implement those rules in their company. And therefore, it's so important, and I really appreciated what you said at the beginning, that we really have to discuss and consider well before taking any kind of decision. It's very important to see how we move forward and also take into account specific concerns of small companies. And one of those concerns I'm going to highlight too. The first one is the reformulation and the changing of recipes, which is quite difficult for small companies. First of all, they don't have scientists on board to start playing around with ingredients, checking how they can develop products that are compliant with the Nutri-Score and can have a good Nutri-Score. They really develop their products to taste based on traditional procedures, based on traditional recipes. And so it's not that easy to start reformulating. On top of that, changing those recipes could easily lead to a difference in taste, and hence also consumers saying, okay, but this is not our traditional product anymore. We're not going to buy this product anymore. An additional element in reformulation is that for geographical indications, and we do have a huge number of geographical indications on food in Europe, that reformulation isn't always possible. And there you have specific standards that you have to comply with, and making sure that you comply with those standards makes that you get the geographical indication, yes or no. If we then look at Nutri-Score, we fear that many of the traditional artisanal products might look less healthy in comparison to the industrially produced products who have been reformulated and in that way coincide with the criteria in the Nutri-Score. And if you then put them next to each other in the supermarket, those traditional and potentially more healthy products might lose their attraction with consumers. So that's the first concern that we have on the Nutri-Score. Then a second problem that we see is that it's indeed a one-size-fits-all approach that does not really represent a balanced diet. And if you look at the Nutri-Score, it weighs good and bad ingredients, but the value can be artificially changed and still have certain high sugar levels, high salt levels, high fat levels. But if you play around, you might be able to make sure that you fall into the positive Nutri-Score. The products then seem healthy, but actually are not, and especially also could be damaging when they are consumed in large quantities. By displaying those color codes, the consumer is also a bit discouraged to information on nutritional choices. And we were discussing ahead of the panel as well. If you go on the color codes, you often buy things where afterwards you think, okay, but is this healthy? And then looking at other products which have a negative score that you think, okay, but I've always thought that, for instance, salmon is a very healthy product. And it was stated also in the presentation that fish is a very healthy product. So being careful on oversimplifying is a very important thing. CEBP, the Confederation of Bakers, which is a member with SME United, has been running information campaigns in schools about healthy nutrition for quite a while. And if we now would start with implementing a Nutri-Score in a general basis without any other elements taken into account, that would really be a campaign in vain, because kids would grab the colors because that's easy without really reflecting on, is this a diversified diet that I'm now following? Is this a healthy diet? Is that a personalized diet as been provided before? So at SME United, instead, we also follow what Competere has put forward to the Commission, that it's more helpful to the consumer to display nutritional values per portion rather than having the oversimplified system. In that way, also ensuring that the consumer makes an informed choice and a balanced decision on its food. And then I would like to conclude with one, education on healthy eating is a very important element, and not using the excuse of saying for certain consumers, the simple procedure of color coding can be the most advantage. And as a final conclusion, whatever the option will be, always check with those small and medium-sized enterprises that for them the system is feasible, because they are still providing in our day-to-day local needs at regional level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Talk. I feel the pressure on Jordi next to me that he wants to make up with the time. But we are, trust me.
Yeah.
I will move on now because I have the pressure, but we'll come back on the trade issue, and particularly on the role of small medium enterprises and how the labeling system is or can impact on them. And I'd like to continue on the small medium enterprises as well then on the taxpayers. And in fact, is this the right one?
No, close that one.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
If it's not the camera.
Okay.
It's not.
Prepare for the camera.
Yeah, the camera is yours.
Yeah, no, we'll come to that. Jeremy, he wants the microphone. So I'll introduce Jorge Hates, that is the head office of the Taxpayer Association of Europe, and he's also been member of the Small Medium Enterprises Connect. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much first for the invitation. I have to say, I feel me personally touched by this topic. You see, I'm overweighted means I make every day the wrong decision in the supermarket somehow. But if I really analyzing this, if I was coming to Brussels, I was very slim, it was 12 years ago, and I think then I started to grow. So if you're working in the environment of the European Union, you should put a D on it, because it leads to grow. So it's a joke, I think, but the topic is very important. We're supporting health, of course, but I think with this example, it's sometimes the discussion is too simple, perhaps, and I think as European taxpayers, we're thinking, we like simple solutions, but often it's not fitting to the reality. And I think this approach we should keep always in mind. And then we should see if it's proportional. If this system is not helping to solve this problem, what is the impact for SMEs? And if I would see, like we heard before, SMEs are the main part who producing traditional food at the moment. So if it's oil, traditional meals, and so on, it is SMEs. That means often they're using products like olive oil, honey, or others, or meat, where you say it's a C or a D. It's overproportional. And like we hear, big companies, because they have a bigger repertoire, they can compensate it. And we should be not naive if we see this and keep this in mind, that we see the market, that also some interests are there who say, yes, it's a good idea. We do something to health washing us. And in the same time, our market shares are growing because orders disappear. And we should keep in mind that big companies are not always bad, but in this point, they have also not only health interests, and SMEs are often these victims of regulation with a good intention, but with a bad outcome, who would not changing the problem at all, perhaps. And it's open also a door, I have to say, who is really dangerous, because you are rating food A, B, C, D. D is not good. What is this thing, what you can use it for, to nudge consumers, to influence the market? We know as supermarket chains, if you only buy A and B, you get money back, some coins. This is influencing the consumer behavior. He thinks he gets money back if he's buying only A and B. That means you buy in majority food from big companies, not from small companies. Then the next point, the supermarket wants to change the repertoire to 75% of A and B. Very good advertisement, but it means that SMEs who have already a problem to enter the supermarket chains with the products will be excluded at all. And this has an impact to the markets. And then we have to say, what is happening if SMEs are excluded? SMEs are the majority in the countryside. They are not only producing food, they are also representing culture. They're representing single villages. They're representing history. And I have also to say, when started this problem with wage? Not when the small one producing traditional food, it started, food becomes an industry. And the food industry is supporting now the Nutri-Score. Perhaps you know better what is healthy, but SMEs not. But SMEs are not part of this problem that people have civil diseases. So why we punishing now and excluding SMEs from the market who are never part of the problem? And I think this approach shows us already this is the wrong direction we are going. And I say always, we have also to trust the consumer. But if the consumer say, okay, I buy cheese because it's good ASD, but he don't find anymore the selection in the supermarket because it's the excluded products. If somebody has to say, okay, it's becoming too more expensive, if I get money back if I'm only buying A and B, it's influencing the poor people who can say, okay, I don't buy D, I buy perhaps instead of an bio apple juice is D, I buy Coca-Cola, who is B, who I get money back if I buy Coca-Cola instead of apple juice. And I think this is the wrong approach. And of course, it has a market impact. And in the end, we will see also, if you're rating this, also the ideas of fat taxes, sugar taxes, where we're all against this, because I think taxes should not educate people. This we are all absolutely against. Again, in school, they should empower the children. They empower the people with education must cost money. What is long-term? It's cost money. It's not easy decision. I cannot say after 4 years, I made it. It is a long way to go, 10 years or more, to change the behaviors. But then you will see that the ideas will popping up to say, okay, A and B is good, C and D, we put extra taxation on it. And it means really you open the box of Pandora for many, many bad things who are happening after this. And I can warn you only to give the door open, make the door open for simple solutions who brings you a lot of bad follow-up, not decisions, happenings. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Horst, and thank you so much, Veronique, for being here. I understand I will make a change in the program since we have made it up for now. Since Miss Veronique is going to leave soon because of another commitment, a previous commitment, if there is any question specifically, we can take it now. Otherwise, we can certainly move on. Instead, we remain here with us. I see no hands, so you are really dismissed. And thank you so much for joining us and bringing these important matters to us. But the role that the SME are crucial in the European economy, and we understand how some system could obviously harm them. And obviously very important is, as was mentioned earlier, is the element of education and how education takes time, it takes money, it takes trust, and in a way it takes faith, but at the end is the very end solution that we can implement. It's not an easy solution, as you said. So unfortunately, we tend to get too easy solutions and we think they work. Just a small comment, maybe Professor Karub and Professor Struck can help us on this, but there are very few studies, and unfortunately it takes time and money to verify whether the impact of certain taxation that you were mentioning is having good results, because the factors are incredibly high. There are studies in California showing that there are people that from the Bay Area are moving to other states to buy sugar drinks, and there's no real study showing that there is a benefit out of this taxation. Very interesting is the study done in Chile on a very short period of time, but again, the use of black dots to discriminate in a way the use of salt, the use of sugar, of saturated fats, of sugar, is showing that there is no real improvement, particularly for low-income people in terms of obesity reduction, but there is an increment in the cost of living for these people. So they tend to spend more, but they don't improve their diet. So it would be great to see more of these studies that they take a lot of time, long period of time, and they take, of course, a lot of money in order to be undergone. So thank you very much. Now we move on. We can give applause to the both of you, particularly for the timing. And I can call my last, I would say our last guest, that actually I think she deserves a big applause because she left this morning at 3 a.m. So it means she deserves it, and she comes from Galati, so is Maddalena Balau as a lecturer and researcher from the Danubius University of Galati. But you are not the one that is coming from too far. We also have some people from Guatemala here, so that they were visiting the European Parliament, and I'm very happy to welcome them here and very interested in the topic. So Maddalena is shifting to a different topic, but is focusing as a researcher. She's doing this, focusing on the role of the consumer and how the consumer might be affected by the labeling scheme. Please.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the introduction. So now we will take this perspective on consumer behavior and what we know about consumer behavior and how we expect the label to change the consumer behavior. Can I have the next slide? Yes. We will start from this question. Should front-of-pack labels stimulate easy or well-informed decision-making in consumers? And we would like, of course, to have both, but we cannot have easy and well-informed decision in the same moment. So in order to understand the complexity of the issue, we will look at what an informed choice means, what is an easy choice, and how this is facilitated by our the way we live our lives today. We will also look at the role of context in stimulating the choice. And then we will see which is the link between a well-informed choice and an easy choice, because these are not separate, or we as consumers, we link them in our daily life. And finally, we will discuss the dilemma between easy and well-informed choice in the food shopping context. So when tackling the issue of a well-informed consumer choice, this is the taken for granted philosophy of consumer choice, that we are rational, meaning that we compare costs and benefits, and we will choose the alternative, the solution that provides us the maximum utility, meaning the maximum benefits for the minimum costs. This is very interesting ideal. It is more of an ideal than something we do all the time. We practice well-informed choice for choices that are hard to make. For example, when we buy a house, when we buy a car, when we decide to move to another city. But when we make choices related to the food we consume daily, we seldom use this well-informed approach. We do not compute all the variables. This is what we were supposed to do. Why is this well-informed ideal so appealing? It's because we say that the consumer is in control and the consumer is fully aware of his choice. So the consumer is always right. But we also know that this is a lie. We are influenced in our choices by various elements. And of course, the label influences our choice, but this is not the only thing that influences our food choice in the supermarket, for example. We will look now to the easy choice in a consumer context. And an easy choice is also a choice that we make fast. And usually we arrive at this easy choice through a learning process that has taken place before. For example, we have taken a well-informed decision. We were satisfied with the product we bought, and we will repeat that. And we'll make a habit of buying a certain brand of cereals for breakfast. But we also may lead to easy choices by imitating what we see around us. We learn what to buy from our family, from our friends, from various sources. So we may arrive to easy choices without a well-informed choice before. These easy choices are also facilitated by the environment in which we make the choice. For example, in the supermarket, it will be irrational, we could say, to compare all the products, all the cereals, and to look into details for all the nutrients and all. So we make a fast choice. If we want to make a purchase in 20 minutes, and also to have not only cereals, but also some other things in our chart, then we have to make the decision fast. So nowadays, the easy consumer choice is facilitated by the environment, by the fast pace of our lives, and also by stimulus that we can get from labels and from a lot of other information sources in the supermarket. So the easy choice is by default the default choice we have nowadays. However, this easy choice has disadvantages because the consumer is not fully aware why he chose a certain product over another. We may find ourselves with products that we didn't know why exactly we chose. Maybe we were, it was an impulse choice, or maybe we buy something out of a habit, as I was telling you, but then something changes in our lives. For example, we become pre-diabetic, and we start to have a concern with carbohydrates. If this happens, then the easy choice when we bought cereals high in sugar, for example, becomes a problem, because we have to dismantle the easy choice that we were using by habit and make a well-informed decision considering our new condition. So the easy choice is by default, the by default choice, but if we want to have consumers in control, they must be able to dismantle this easy choice and reanalyze the reasons that led them to this choice and change the choice. We go to the next slide. Okay, so the context, of course, has an important role in our decisions. And when we say context, we have the subjective context of the individual consumer, meaning his background, his health conditions, his socio-economic situation, and when we objective context of choice, we mean the structure in which the choice takes place, the architecture of choice, let's say, in which is decided by the shop. How is the shopping context presented? These are informations that consumers compute in their choice. And it's a lot of, when we make a decision, we are supposed to compute so many data. But actually, we make it easier by using heuristics, by using rules of thumb, and we make the easy choice as to have a choice in the limited amount of time we must make that choice in. The labeling of the product can stimulate the easy choice or a well-informed choice. If we can understand why we make an easy choice or what led us to make an easy choice, and we can go back and, for example, we need to be more careful to carbohydrates than to fats, then we are able to change that choice. So not to keep buying out of habit the product that was not doing us good anymore. Okay, so the final slide. No, we will go faster here because we discussed. No. To the previous. This one. Yes. So I was telling that it is important to consider the link between well-informed and easy choices because they are linked. We arrive to easy choices through this learning process, and this learning process happens all the time. And an easy choice is a good choice as long as the context is stable. But for example, if something happens to my health condition and I have to consider new aspects, then it's important for me to go back to the factors that led me to the initial choice and change my habit. So in changing easy choices, in changing habits, we have to take this approach of dismantling the habitual choice, and this is not easy to do because it is very easy to fall back into our old habits. When we discuss about the final, go to the final. This one, yes. When we discuss the dilemma between easy and well-informed choice in the context of food shopping, we have to be aware that the shopping context stimulates these easy choices and labels, which seems very easy to process, without for the consumer to think too much of the consequences of consuming that product. This kind of label can stimulate easy choice, and consumer might like it because it is a simple solution for the short run. If the product is not serving the person on the long run, meaning that it increases his blood sugar, for example, then it's a problem that the consumer can postpone in the shopping context, because the shopping context stimulates this easy choice, and there is also social acceptance that, okay, it's good to buy a product that says less fat, but it has the same amount of, for example, a bag of chips has less fat, but has the same amount of carbohydrates as a cake. Yeah, and we eat a salty snack, but we get the effects of eating a cake in terms of blood sugar, for example. This short-term decision versus a long-term impact is something that the shopping context doesn't stimulate. Also, what facilitates this is the high pace of changes in our lives. We are very busy, so it's easy for us to buy something as fast as we can and take care of other problems in our lives. So the pace of the life is also influences the way we buy food and we consume food. Another thing that is important is the high rate of non-communicable diseases that can affect consumers' choices. And sadly, this is what makes most of consumers rethink their easy choices in terms of food consumption. If they get diabetes, for example, then they will have to reconsider the sugar intake. But before that, they consider it's no problem. They can eat some more and some more and some more. So unfortunately, currently, we have to wait until that point before the consumer becomes truly aware that there is a problem with his eating habits. Thus, my proposal is that consumers should be enabled to break down the micro decisions that had led to the easy choice and reconsider the input information and make a new informed choice when it is needed. If they have to reconsider the fat intake or the salt intake or whatever other part of the food, to be able to remake the choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your commitment, particularly. Before leaving the floor to three members of parliament, I see one, second, and third one is joining. Let me do a quick recap. First of all, I would say that it's thrilling how much we are behind nutritional facts or nutritional information, and particularly how much we are behind the label. And here we're talking about some of the core principles on which Europe is founded are actually behind a label. And I'm talking about core principles like diversity, liberties, knowledge, and of course, education. And I think that today we learned something, I would say obvious, but obvious that it's just now obvious. And the fact that education is at the core, is a core of a healthy and balanced and sustainable diet. And education is what empowers each of us, every individual, to make a conscious and free and independent choice. And we also learned that the problem with nutrition is not what we eat, but it's how much, when, and in which way we eat. In other words, all nutrition-related diseases or obesity-related diseases are not so much linked with what, but they are so much linked and more linked with how we eat, our attitude, our habits, our way of life. And just to quote Horst with this example, if we take now 1 gram, each of us takes 1 gram of sugar, of saturated fats or proteins or vitamins, will have a totally different impact that will vary during the days. Tonight, tomorrow morning, before doing workout, after workout, the impact on our body will be completely different. And this is about diversity. And I think we understood clearly, particularly for Professor Struck, that science is moving in that direction with the most recent studies. And we think about research in DNA and in genetics that will lead us to personalized diets. And again, technology is supporting that idea of personalized diets. If we think about all the smart devices we have around us, the so-called wearables, if you think about the smartwatch you wear, all the devices here in this room, they are helping us to move toward a personalized diet. They are interlinked with our kitchen, they are interlinked with our refrigerator and with our supermarket next door. And they will tell us in real time how many calories we are consuming. They will tell us how many calories we will consume during the day, what ingredients, what food, what products we might need during the day based on our habits, on our routines, on our experience. This is, in a way, a great revolution in nutrition. It's a great opportunity that Europe and the European Union, the Parliament and the Commission should take. It's not just the one of diversity and personalization of the diet, but it's also an opportunity to reduce food waste. One of the main causes of environment degradation is food waste. And with personalization of diets, we can reduce food waste, And then there is another chance, small, medium enterprises, is the chance of creating new companies in this area of nutrition. And this is the opportunity, but on the other side, there is the challenge. If we don't do that, others will do it. And I'm particularly referring to the fact that when we talk about health, we're talking about personal data. And there is a problem of ownership of this data, as well as there is a problem of ownership of the algorithms and of the artificial intelligence system. Who owns this? So it's probably better that the Commission and the Parliament will investigate the future and try to regulate it lightly in order to protect consumers, rather than looking backward into an obsolete series of systems that they represent the past. Because, guys, the Nutri-Score is the past. It belongs to a past in which, I was not expecting the applause now, a past in which one fits all. We're moving exactly to the opposite. And if Europe will not do it, China, Israel, Middle East countries, and of course the United States will do it before us. And we will be here with the Nutri-Score. Meanwhile, these guys are telling us through a phone what to eat and how to eat. And this is the highest risk. And we learned from Horst and Veronique, that has just left, an important concept. Again, about diversity. Europe is based on diversity, 27 different regions in which we have a multitude of cultures and a multitude of traditions. And we see that the risk with certain systems that the European Commission is thinking about, the small, medium enterprises, the small entrepreneurs, the new or young farmers that we subsidize, will be forced to change, to modify their formulation, their products formulations, or even worse, they will discriminate some ingredients just because they have a high level of saturated fats in order to enter a distribution channel and in order to end up on a nice shelf with a politically correct green dot. The question is that what we want for our traditions and culture and diets? I don't think so. So we understand here that we are really in front of two options. Behind the label, we have a label, and behind this label, there are two different approaches to what Europe is. On one side, we have the old, obsolete Hegelian state or ethical state where we need to work for the common good. So a small group of people establishes the common good, and then we have an elite of scientists that are establishing an algorithm that guides that directs us inside the supermarket. And here I have two notes. One is very simple. This algorithm is supposed to be perfect, but if there are political and commercial interests, we can make little modification and changes just to ensure that some products are speaking loud, maybe even in these rooms, they move from being an E into suddenly being a C or a B just to please their country politically. And the same, if a country is complaining that that system doesn't work, then we can make some exceptions. Is this going to be serious? I don't think so. And then a second note that I was hearing about earlier that I often hear when we talk about going to the supermarket and we don't have time. Honestly, we are in 2022. We are still walking, and we have been walking standing still for the past 50,000 years. We go around, actually, some of us are still going back to where we were, our ancestor were, so we are going backward. But don't we really have the time to read a nutrition fact because we are in a hurry, so we need somebody to tell us what is good or bad? Seriously? You guys have been to the most exclusive schools, and you cannot read a nutrition fact? We are developing quantum technology, but we cannot read what is on a food product? Seriously? And I understand that some people might say, well, there are people that didn't go to the exclusive schools. Yes, the majority, unfortunately, did not, and they are probably not in the bubble of Brussels, they are somewhere else. Then the effort is not to tell them, you guys are stupid, you didn't have opportunity, we tell you what is good or bad. We need exactly to do the opposite that takes time, and is to do education. So this is one way. On the other ways, we have the simple way, is the one of the founding fathers of Europe. So we don't have to go far away from where we are, and I'm thinking about Spinelli here. And this is the open society. And the open society is based on basic principles: diversity, liberties, knowledge, through education. Through education, we acknowledge diversity. Through diversity, we empower freedom and liberties, and through freedom, we foster knowledge. Knowledge, education, liberties. Knowledge, education, diversity, liberties. This is how humans for thousands of years have been doing through trial and error. So I think that this is the way we should take, the one of diversity and liberties and knowledge and education. But again, it's upon us. So I leave you the floor. I leave the floor to Mr. Dorfman. This is the liberal family, so let's see if you... Thank you so much. I will be back later.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, we have some timing issues because I believe we have half an hour delay. Otherwise, we won't be able to give the floor to all the participants.
You know.
So now that we got through these three different sessions, nutrition, trade, and business, and then finally to the behavior of consumers, I like to leave the floor to the three members of parliament who are representing Renew Europe, and then we have Mr. Dorfman from the European People's Party. So if you agree, being majority, I will start with Mr. Dorfman, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organizing this afternoon, which I think is extremely inspiring. Well, let me start from the farm to fork strategy. I was actually, looks better here.
Yeah, you have the camera.
Okay, I was actually a rapporteur for the Parliament's report on the farm to fork strategy, and the farm to fork strategy, we said that we want a better system for labeling to make to guarantee a proper choice for consumers. But as we saw today, and I fully agree with a lot of things which have been said today, things are quite tricky and are not that easy as it sometimes seems. And let me just ask some questions, and I think I'm a bit summarizing what has been said this afternoon. First of all, and I think this is the most important question, what is healthy? What is healthy? Is a skimmed milk healthier than a full milk, not skimmed milk, for example? Yes. If maybe I already consume too many calories, maybe yes. But if I go jogging in the morning here in the park and I consume calories, as much calories as my body needs, no. Maybe full milk with cream is healthier than skimmed milk. So it is not that easy to define what is healthy and what is not healthy. On the other side, I agree that a labeling system, if it wants to have some impact, it needs to be simple. Because clearly the consumer who goes to the supermarket, normally, at least I have the impression that the consumer does not stay 5 minutes in front of a product, controlling all the labels, saying, oh, take this and take something else. Makes a very fast choice. And therefore, the information needs to be simple. I personally think that the Nutri-Score is simple and is too simple because it makes obvious mistakes. I give you just an example because I like to go shopping, not because shopping in the supermarket, not because I spend money, because I like to see how consumers behave. It's very interesting. I saw, for example, in a supermarket here in Brussels, 2 ice creams. One red, and then the other one green. I controlled what is the difference between the 2 ice creams. The difference is very simple. On the green one is a bit less sugar, okay. There is no milk from cows, but there is a vegetarian product. So there are substitutes, milk substitutes in it, fibers in it. That's the difference. I can ask myself, okay, if I have a product which is not where the milk is not coming from a cow but is coming from something else, from a vegetarian product, is it healthy or is it not? Or is the information too simple because I need to explain what really happened? The second question is, okay, and I think this we did not discuss that much this afternoon, could such a system improve recipes? So could such a system bring the industry to rethink some of these recipes? I think yes. And therefore I think on some products, a labeling system could make sense, especially in highly processed products. Because to tell to the consumer if an apple or a salad or potato is A or B or C is simply a nonsense. To tell the consumer what's happening with the things kids eat for breakfast, maybe it makes more sense because the consumer at the first, if sees this in the supermarket, maybe is not aware how much sugar, how much salt, what is in this product. And maybe labeling it brings the industry to better ingredients. Maybe yes. Now this is for me a very, very interesting question. And here, and I'm coming to just 1 or 2 points. Why do we not? Because today it's not a question in the European Union. It's not a question if we want the Nutri-Score or not. The Nutri-Score is a matter of fact. It is here. If you go to the supermarket here in Brussels, the Nutri-Score is here. And the question is only, do we create a European system to bring all this into a European, let's say, into a European role? And why do we not start to say, okay, we have 2 or 3 member states which introduced the Nutri-Score. Let's go to see what happened there. If it had an influence on consumer behavior, on recipes, or it didn't. could be interesting, maybe. Or we could think how we can improve this system to be not as simple as it, or too simple, I think, as it is today. The last 2 points on a system like the Nutri-Score. If it is like it is today, so it's not a European system or system, a public system, but it's a private system. It's owned by private companies. Who decides what is healthy and what is not healthy? Who decides which product is red or orange or green in a private system? Is it completely transparent? Do we know the algorithm behind all this? Or maybe some products might be green because who wants to label them wants to have them green. I don't know. Could be. And therefore, I think we need a European system, a public system, because if not, this private system goes on to exist. And it remains a private system with an unknown algorithm. And the last point is very much connected with this, and this Mr. Heitz said this. I'm asking myself, if I'm going to the supermarket here in Brussels, I have a nice consumer card, and if I buy certain type of products, I get money back or get points. So why the supermarket is giving me points? Because the supermarket is interested that I have a healthy nutrition. Maybe yes, because if I have a healthy nutrition, maybe I survive longer, so I remain as a consumer. Maybe yes. Could be. But I have the impression that the distribution chains are very much interested in their own economic interest, and this is completely okay. I mean, they are economic operators. We here in this parliament, we had a long debate, and we are having a debate about the role of distribution in the food chain. And this parliament always thought that we need to strengthen everything in the chain, but not the supermarkets. We think that the supermarkets today have a power which can also be abused. And we made legislation here in this house in order to strengthen other parts, the producers, first of all, with in the chain. I'm convinced the supermarket gives me points because the system strengthens the power of the supermarket chains, because they decide at the end what I buy. They give me the points today to decide tomorrow what I buy. And this is for me, the biggest problem of the system. If it remains like it is a system which is in the interest not of the consumer, it's in the interest of the distribution. And it will bring to further abuse or the further strengthen the distribution system in the food chain. And this is for sure not what I want, and it's for sure not what this house wants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Moving very fast. Please remain in the 5 minutes. Now the floor is to Georgios Kyrtsos from Renew Europe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank competitor and colleague Cañas for taking the initiative for today's debate. I think we are dealing with a major issue with a very important economic and social dimension in all EU member states. I would like to express strong reservations concerning the Nutri-Score system. The concept sounds interesting, but the application could create more problems than it would solve. I believe that what we describe as Mediterranean diet has qualitative characteristics that nobody can deny, and that it helps improve quality of life, and in certain cases that have been studied, longevity. Of course, I noticed with horror that, according to Professor Karouba, Greeks are about to smash the European record of obesity. I don't know, probably we are moving away from Mediterranean diet, not because of Mediterranean diet. In addition, the food sector in certain Mediterranean countries, especially those which have been able to combine quality food with the tourist industry, plays a major economic and social role. In my view, we should avoid taking binding decisions without exhaustive prior analysis of the situation. The way that Nutri-Score has been presented does not necessarily lead to healthier diets, but to marketing opportunities for products that will be presented healthier than they actually are. For example, the algorithm used does not make a distinction between saturated and unsaturated fats, between unprocessed and ultra-processed foods, or the use of artificial sweeteners that make it easy for junk food products to circumvent the system and obtain a deceptively positive score. Moreover, not everything is consumed in the same quantity. This has been underlined by all speakers, leading many products that are necessary for a balanced diet to receive a negative score that could discourage consumers. According to European Commission sources, the decision on whether a Nutri-Score will be selected as Europe's mandatory food label will probably be made during the Swedish presidency of the EU during the first months of 2023. I strongly advise against commitments that do not take into consideration all the aspects that I mentioned. I consistently support healthy diets, but some of the major companies that promote Nutri-Score have a record moving in the wrong direction. I would also like to address, as a Greek, because I think that the Eurozone is facing a new economic crisis. We are in the new economic crisis, Italy, Greece, and other countries. We have to support SMEs because now they are facing an energy issue, an interest rate issue, tax pressure, especially concerning consumer taxes, pressure from inflation. So it's not the time to add additional pressure because first we make their lives difficult and then we grumble about the rise of populism. So I would like to congratulate those who organized this event. And from what you understood, I think we can all together look for a better solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to know you're not going to supermarkets to spy people. I leave the floor now for the real last remarks and the last statement and the last talk by Jordi Cañas.
Gracias.
Well, thank you very much. We're all here today because we're very close to the Commission's legislative proposal on a subject that is of utmost importance. I am pleased to see the high number of participants present here today. This really stresses the importance of the debate. The debate is important for us as legislators, especially because the ones that will be making decisions are usually not the experts. And in this case, we're dealing with a very complex matter. This requires us to pose the adequate questions so that we can have the right information upon which we can formulate our legislative proposal. This is not easy at all. It's a good exercise to try and do it, and this is why we decided to organize the events. We need to gather the necessary information to have a complex debate, because otherwise we'll always end up in simple terms. It is needed to gather, to have information for consumers, and consumers, it is up to consumers to decide. But this may seem very simple at first glance, but it's very complex. Why is it complex? Well, we need to look into the goal of these actions. Why would the Commission want to harmonize front of package labeling system? What would be the Commission's main goal? Well, they want to promote health, citizens' health. They want for citizens to be informed on the products that they consume and the effect that it can have on their health, because the ultimate goal is to improve their health. We want for health to contribute to our lifestyle, and our food system needs to be healthy. It may seem simple, but it's not evidence. How do we want to do this? Through food labeling. How to define that food labeling? Well, there lies the problem. That's why we want to have this debate. Oftentimes, we can have very large goals and commit very profound mistakes in the process because, as I said, our ultimate goal is to promote health. We can do that through education. We must do that through education and by gathering sufficient information. And for that information to be useful and to prevent us from feeling surmounted by the amount of information and being toxified by information needs to be accessible. And so oftentimes we want for these labels to lead to easy decisions. We want for that labeling to guarantee an informed decision that is also an easy decision. Easy, but well informed, because otherwise the information won't be used in the end. I'm not an expert in the field, and I usually like to consult experts on different matters. And this is the reason why we actually wanted to organize these events. All of us, the academic community, politicians, experts, all of us are consumers at the end of the day. None of us is not a consumer. We can't escape that. So we're all facing the same problem. How can we influence our buying decisions if we want to promote a healthy diet? I always say everyone can decide what they do with their lives, but they also must look into the consequences that their actions have. A bad decision brings about a series of consequences. And this is why we have been looking at this as legislators. We wanted for this proposal from the Commission taken to this Parliament to take into account all of the depth and the complexity of this matter. They need to take into account what this is going to mean for SMEs, for finance, for the financial consequences. All of it needs to be taken into account. If the information has to be easy and informed, it needs to be affordable. And so we need to include smaller companies so that they're not affected by large corporations and the influence of other parliamentaries with goals that are not in line. And so with this, I'd like to conclude with the time available. I believe that we need to ask the right questions. What, how, and why? Pose the adequate questions so that when trying to influence the legislative proposal, it respects the right goals. Better information for a better health and a better way of life in an industry that needs to comply with these requirements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordi. And Jordi actually is the guy that has been pushing me to cut the time, but that was not very good. But, you know, I'm a university instructor as well, so it's very hard for me to stop my colleagues. By the way, we are moving very quickly to the question and answers. And I know that there are a couple of requests already coming, particularly to make more statements. I have to ask you to be extremely briefly as much as possible, because at 6 o'clock we have to quit, to stop. So I had already in the line, and then we'll take more questions, and somebody will help me in if there is a mic or there are mics on the table. So I would like to start with Christina Papanikolaou from the Greek chambers, from the Athens Chambers of Commerce. And then we have Robert Taylor from New Direction as well, that is there. And then if there is anybody else, please.
Thank you very much for this invitation. And we are very glad to be here with you today. We present the Athens Chamber of Small and Medium Industries, in this chamber, there are hundreds of SMEs, of producers and supplies businesses. And we have organized since the last almost 1 year, 2 years, a large forum of about 20 other associations and chambers and different professional bodies, as well as food operators and food producers, consumers organizations, also food experts, a large forum that is called Initiative for an Effective Based on Nutritional Education Food Labeling System. In this context, this collaborative initiative has published an analytic discussion paper on food labeling system before the revision of the regulation that is well known, the 11669 of 2011, for this harmonized pan-European front of pack labeling nutritional system. We have also participated in EFSA's public consultation, and we have suggesting that health outcomes, for example, obesity or anything else, are strongly related with dietary habits, nutritional preferences, and traditional customs of different ways of cooking and food processing. There is a very good example of a Mediterranean diet. Me personally, I'm also a medical I'm also medical. I have worked with Mrs. Trikopoulou for some time, and there is something that we have to say, that is, in Mediterranean diet there is diversity. There is how often, the quantity, the calories, but also is the combination of different nutrients in the daily diet, and of course the cooking processing. So any food products evaluation that is stated on a label should take in account the position of the relevant food in the daily diet, as well as its usual consumption in relation to other nutrients that could differentiate its positive or harmful impact on health.
Thank you, Christine. I have to interrupt.
Yes. In any case, just a sentence. It's 2 minutes and 50 seconds. In any case, food choices are principally related to consumers' appropriate information and education. That's why we want to focus to education that should be enforced by the European and national authorities and could not be replaced by any labels, new schema or content. And just one word, I would like to stress on this, that we need a broader nutritional strategy and public health policy, suggesting that health outcomes are strongly related with dietary habits. I know very well that we live in the era of personalized medicine and, of course, personalized nutrition, but this is not in contrast with public health policy and nutritional policy that and nutritional recommendations that any country has today.
Thank you.
And that should be applied.
If you send me the statement you have, we will publish it on our website and as well as on Ciudadanos' website. Robert, please be British as much as possible.
Be British, to be brief, basically. No, the only point that's really left to be made, of course, is the philosophical point about all of this, which is that who should be deciding who nudges who. Is this working? Sorry? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that helps, I think. Yeah, no, the only point is, are we going to continue infantilizing consumers, or are we going to allow consumers to make their own choices? As we've already heard, education is the key to that. And as we know from Hayek, there's no better educator than the marketplace itself. So the answer is obviously through competition. So rather than having the European Union barge its way in as a Hegelian nanny state, why don't we just accept that there's already multiple models and that they should be able to compete with each other on an open marketplace instead?
Well, thank you very much. My name is Carla Valeiras Alvarez, and I come from Safe Food Advocacy Europe. Thank you for organizing a very interesting event, and thank you all to the participants for the very interesting presentations. I'm very glad that Mr. Cañas had mentioned that it's important for decision makers to surround yourself or to speak to industry, to different stakeholders, because we are not experts, we are learning. Therefore, I would like to highlight that at SAFE, we have written a report on the concerns that we have, or the flaws that we have found with regards to Nutri-Score. So I would invite you all to read it and to look. We want, as you all said, well-informed choices. We want easy choices, but we want informed choices, and we want to have all the information. Otherwise, with no information, there's no choice, simple as that. And just a last point, following on the last iteration, it's very simple to put the burden on the consumers and to call for education. We agree with that. Education is the key to everything, essentially. However, food environments also play a role in how consumers make a choice. So it's very important not to miss that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for representing this view of consumers. I guess we have one from Frederick Trusser from Smes.
Yes, in the absence of my colleague Veronique, I'll just quickly take the floor again because I wanted to comment on something Mr. Dorfman said. I think that the thought was in the right direction, but I just have to emphasize that when we speak about the nutritional landscape, so all the food businesses, we cannot talk about what impact does any measure have in the supermarket, because that is not the place where you have all the products. Indeed, many SMEs don't like to be in supermarkets, as you mentioned, because of certain listing problems. But we keep the people also away from the markets, from the bakeries where the food is to touch. And that is where you experience food and you learn how to handle food, what is healthy, what is seasonal, for example. So please, when somebody tells you this is a good system in any way, but it's only examined from the angle how it works in the supermarket on the consumer, you're looking at a small thing, and we've seen all during the pandemic, the supermarket is not necessarily the future. So please always keep in mind the entire food landscape and not just the supermarket when you think about implementing such a system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frederick. Is there any other comment or question? There's one there, please.
Yeah. Hello, Paolo Patruno, Clitravi Meat Processing Industry Association. I want to add a thought into the basket to underline also the decision-making process, how in some cases, especially when it comes to nutrition, in many cases is somehow not reliable in terms of the studies that are carried on. I refer to the recent study that was carried on also by a consultant that the European Commission mandated to carry on the study, and the methodology used was not clarified by the consultant himself. And in another study that we carried on with the University of Wageningen on animal welfare, we used the same methodology, and then we used the other methodology like the glasses that IRTA provided. IRTA is a research institute in Spain. And we found completely different results when you go and look in reality what consumer purchase, what are the decisions of consumer, and what influence decision of consumer. I agree with Safe that not anything can be in the end of consumer, but I think that the reductionist view that is guiding the decision-making process should a little bit be changed into a different perspective, because we rely on studies that are not reliable at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So if there's no other further question or comments, I conclude by saying that on our website, and together with Mr. Cañas, we share a letter with the European Commission, providing some of the suggestions. Some comments were proposed here today, We understand that, day after day, there might be something to be changed. So we'll try to update the letter and the manifesto, as we call it. If you have any inputs, please be free to send it to either Mr. Cañas on to us. I don't have time now to show it to you, but I will make sure that we can send it, but it's also at the entrance. Thank you so much for doing that for me. Traditional way, I would say, to the Catalan efficiency or Spanish efficiency. I don't know, just to be polite.
It's the same.
It's the same. Yeah, I know. It depends. It depends who's next to me. So in this case, it's the same. Maybe later on will not. But I leave you the floor for the real last remarks, Jordi, because you have been hosting us. You have been very patient. I realize you are more Scandinavian than Catalan. So I leave the floor to you. Thank you so much.
No, primero quería pedir perdón por poner esas pastas.
Well, first of all, I would like to apologize because of the food we have shown here back there, because we are just doing the opposites of what we are fostering here. It's not healthy at all. So for the next time, we'll make it better and we'll try to choose another kind of food. Something more in line with our proposals. But no joking now, I would like to first of all thank Pietro and Carola. Thank you very much for helping me so much in the organization of this event. Also, thanks to Irene, Maria, Sofia, and to the rest of the team, Ciudadanos communication team. These events are quite complex to prepare, and I think it has been a success. And thanks most of all to the speakers, to the participants, both here at the European Parliament, are connected to our streaming connection. It's very important to hold events like this when we are in the pre-legislative process phase. So we need to listen to everyone. We need to listen to the academia, to the experts. To all those who will need to implement whatever we legislate. We need to listen to businesses, and most of all to small and medium businesses, because in many cases they are not included or involved in the decision-making processes. I was very happy because there were many representatives from small and medium enterprises here, because that's what we want to do here in the European Parliament. We want to listen, to reflect, to debate, to decide, but also to listen. And we need to listen to the society as a whole, to politicians, to academia, but also to small and medium businesses, because they are normally left aside. And why are we doing this? Because we need to arrive in time. The European Commission has to listen to what we have said. The European Commission has different ways of listening. And they will also listen to what we have just said here. We are going to push forward our manifesto. We will talk to different European parliamentary groups, and we will send all that to the European Commission so that they can take it into account. We want to contribute to the pre-legislative phase. At the end of the day, we will have a legislative proposal. And when we receive the back at the European Parliament, we should already be prepared. The goal here is to have some good piece of legislation. We are not trying to win something here or to prove our political ideals. What we are trying to do here is to have some tool for the citizens. They need to have an informed tool so that they can take care of their health. This is something important for everyone. And sometimes we have to define whatever defines us. Mediterranean diet is not just a diet, it's who we are. Nutrition and eating is linked to our culture, to who we are. And sometimes the southern countries are not present enough in legislative processes. Sometimes they do not influence enough And this happens because we do not explain things properly or that we do not arrive in time. So we are hosting this here today in order to avoid this north-south gap. Whatever we decide here will have an impact in 27 member states. And I do think it's necessary to have some harmonization. We have an internal market, so we need some harmonized labeling. But this does not imply that all differences should be taken into account. We have several differences at different levels: dietary, cultural. We cannot end having some products which are healthy seen as non-healthy. And this is happening right now. And we need to avoid this. And we need to contribute in order to change this. And we need to do that since the beginning of the debate. If we try to do it at the end, we are already late. I think this event was really successful. It was a very good space to reflect, to talk, to build political proposals. And I hope that at the end of the process, we will manage to have a harmonized label with all the goals we expect. Thank you very much.